Right, so next up is Chris Rainier Tsunami eyewitness account by Nat Geo photographer. It says there, this is the first person account published in the National Geographic News of the photographer Chris Rainier's experiences of a tsunami in Indonesia in 2005. And this is page 27 of the edXL English Language and Literature A-Level Anthology. So we'll just go through this one and we can zoom in a bit and have a look. Okay. Right, so for a few things to remember, again, this is an online text, so worth bearing that in mind. Very simply, in terms of the discourse structure of the piece, we've got the actual one-word subheadings here in isolation, which is not a massive point, but it's just worth mentioning that this is going to be linked to from somewhere else. So you're probably going to want to go to the website and then see a preview of this and then click on it. It's worth just thinking about that. It's you're not just going to stumble across it. You could, obviously, on a search or something like that, but the way that the website's set up, that you would actually get there. So you've got all these as, in effect, minor sentences, but they're not really even sentences, but they work effectively like that. But as headings, that's just discourse structure for the internet. So, Tsunami eyewitness account by Nat Geo photographer. This is a familiar abbreviation for National Geographic, as you can see there as well. Opens up with a very conversational discourse marker, the best way to describe this. And notice as well, even though it's a written piece, we talk about multimodality and ideas of speech and writing overlapping. We've got parentheses here, which is very much like something we do when we talk. So the best way to describe this, because we grew up with the images and we all know what it looked like. So you can see the parentheses there. So it's got some elements of speech brought into it. Again, the reportage, the style of it is a personal account. And notice again, it says eyewitness. So it all links to that. So the writer, Rainier, uses cultural reference with Hiroshima after the atomic bomb. Now, Chris Rainier, National Geographic and Chris Rainier are American. It's an American publication and he's an American writer. So this is obviously a cultural reference that is familiar worldwide and it's historical, but there's maybe more kind of resonance with American readers because it marks obviously American dropping of the atomic bomb in Japan, and so it's not as if there isn't emotional weight behind it anywhere else, but you get the point. It's sort of sewn into American consciousness there. Then you've got this really effectively tautological sentence here, and what I mean by that is that you don't really need to have that sentence in. It's totally destroyed, but just in case you don't get the Hiroshima reference, that's why he's putting that in, but you probably will. Sorry, the lightsaber drifted then. Then we've got the buildings have been flattened for miles. Again, a bit more tautology. It's really, we kind of get the hint from these first two bits here, don't we? Excuse me, sorry. An entire community is probably something like 100,000 people. So approximation here in the parenthesis to give a sense of scale of the impact of the disaster itself, have been swept out to sea. And swept out to sea is familiar collocation. You often hear of any tragedy. It could be a personal one or a larger scale one, but you often hear the phrase of swept out to sea. Familiar collocation there, set phrase that we've heard before. Another discourse marker here, it's day 15, January 10th, 2005, since the disaster. So this is to contextualise the piece, so the discourse marker in terms of this next bit that he's talking about, that contextualises it. Then there are still vast areas, so the pre-modifiers there is worth mentioning, isn't it? Vast areas. And this pre-modifier, exposed bodies can be seen lying around, decaying. And notice that it's in present tense, present continuous tense actually, decaying. Give an impression that in this example of reportage, where things are happening live, it's not obviously like that. It's written, he wouldn't be writing this live while he's looking around, but that's how it works. So just cleaning up, picking up the bodies remains the biggest challenge. So use of the qualifier there to emphasise the difficulty of the task, because the first thing to do is tidy up, let alone before rebuilding, cleaning up. Then this is a very perfunctory statement as well, picking up the bodies. So it seems very emotionally detached. And we'll see a bit more of that emotional detachment in this piece of writing as well. It's not as if he's not unsympathetic, but it's kind of maintains a kind of professional, distanced kind of tone. And I'd say that is part of the evidence of that, just picking up the bodies. The medical situation is just as daunting, so another discourse marker. Now he's shifting into talking about the relief effort and the kind of care that's going on. Hundreds of thousands of survivors of refugees squatting in makeshift camps wherever you go. So survivors, refugees, camps, makeshift even as well actually. Arguably squatting. You've got a lexical set there of survival, tragedy, escape, those kind of ideas. A lot of relief agencies are trying to get in here to set things up, but the logistics remain a nightmare. Fronted conjunction there, that's another feature of speech that adds to the multimodality of the text, doesn't it, as well? Then we have this strange kind of generalisation here. Everyone is very impressed with the US military relief effort. It doesn't actually specify exactly who it is, who everyone. We're led to assume it's the victims of the tsunami itself. That's what we would think. The US military relief effort, remember National Geographic, American publication, American writer. It's got a very American bias, even though National Geographic is obviously a globally published magazine and familiar to anyone who's ever been to a dental waiting room. They're always there. In the days before phones, they'd be there for you to flick through. But anyway, the UN's coordination of some 200, and the UN gets a reference there as well, but notice which one's coming first. US military relief effort. Coordination of some 200 different charity organisations, and just to point out, it's an American spelling, organisations. Even though technically, even in British English, it's still correct. It's just that we tend to prefer the S spelling rather than the Z, or Z, as an American would say. The urgent challenge is to make sure that another 100,000 people don't die from disease. So we have the horror of this place reminds me of something from a biblical disaster story. So another cultural reference there, and you might argue again as well that the American bias, it's a more religious kind of Christian culture, isn't it? In kind of mainstream kind of terms, so it would come through there into the article. Another cultural reference here, Hieronymus Bosch, a painter of monstrous scenes of hell. In this case, he actually gives you a bit of context there for it too as well. But if you've ever seen those, you could Google Hieronymus Bosch and then if you Google it, you'll be stunned by some of the bizarre images that you'll see. So yeah, worth having a look, just to alarm yourself really. Then everywhere I go, I have to be careful I don't step on a corpse. It sounds like hyperbole, but it could actually be literal, couldn't it? But it will technically be hyperbolic, but you have a look at it in those terms. It's meant to be literal, I think. Because you might find a body in an unexpected place after a tsunami when you think about it. And then I'm just going to move the screen up a bit. Here we go. So then we have the magnitude of this thing is that it goes on for hundreds of miles in both directions. In one area, some 10 square miles, 25 square kilometres. This is because it's got an international audience, so it does miles and kilometres as well. Of the city was completely flattened. This is passive voice here. So 10 square miles of the city was completely flattened. It's emphasising the damage done rather than the tsunami itself in this case. It's why it's using passive voice, to emphasise the damage it's caused rather than the actual thing itself. That's why he's doing that. And again, remember, in terms of voice, we've got this professional tone. So he's actually got figures here as well, and these kind of figures of the actual area, and then 30,000 bodies, 95,000 dead, 77,000 missing. So what you've got is there's a mixture of that. There's some conversational elements, but there's some more formal and precise elements, and there's emotionally detached elements, and this all contributes to that voice of, an experienced travel reporter who's seen a lot of things, and he's trying to convey a sense of scale and damage of what he's actually seeing. Then we've got this question and answer style, which is, it doesn't actually go for it in a really big way in this actual article, it just does it with one question. But you often see that, and that emulates speech, obviously, with adjacency pairs, so you get a question and then an answer. Now, presumably, he's written it himself, so it's answering his own question, which there is a term for, which is hypophora. Hypophora is answering your own question. So he's using this as a structural device. Again, you link it to discourse structure. It's a way of breaking up the text. It's a way of jumping topic effectively. So we'll just scroll up a bit more. And then we've got the food and medical aid is arriving. Notice again the present continuous tense. And it is getting to the survivors. An infrastructure is being set up here in Banda Aceh. I'm not sure that's how it's pronounced, so apologies if that's wrong, and I'm sure it probably is. But the needs are huge. We still see a lot of people with broken bones that have not received treatment. We see people with deep lacerations that have been covered with a dirty rag. So we have anaphora here. We still see, we see. So that repetition. And it's been like first person singular, but here it's first person plural. So whether he's part of a team that's out there, or if he's thinking of himself and Americans present helping, it could be like that. Maybe it is that, because he jumps onto the US military works here from dawn to dusk. Another discourse structure there as well. Discourse feature, sorry. Discourse marker. I'll get it there in the end. And cruise ships have arrived from Singapore with relief workers and supplies. People are very, very appreciative that we are here. Yeah, so he has now seemed to have adopted this first person plural of himself as a reporter. He seems to be linking himself to the US military as part of the relief effort, and it's got a very American bias, as in the American support and relief is the most significant thing here. America, this is really much fits in with Americans' view of themselves on the world stage. Yeah. Anyway, then the US military is being well received. So again, that really just proves what I'm saying there as well. Oh yeah, I've actually missed. Look at this bit as well. They appreciate America's help. People come up to me all the time to say thanks, give me a hug, or start crying in appreciation. I don't know how directly he was involved in helping out, but he's not part of the US military as far as I know. And that's the US military is being well received. So it's passive voice as well. So it's the people receiving, put the emphasis on American military helping out rather than the people receiving the aid. In a lot of the things with this article, it's he could have done something like, I talked to a local who had been affected by it or had lost his family, but it's very impersonal. This is a bit more going from the angle of, hey, we're Americans and we're helping out and we're fixing this problem. It's a bit more like that. You can see it, can't you? There's a conversational kind of feature here because we've got this contraction. It's going to be interesting to see how the massive amount of money raised in the US and other countries, look, America first. It's like Donald Trump. No, he's not like Donald Trump. I'm sure Chris Rainier is nothing like Donald Trump. That would be safe to say. And other countries. So America is first. Will translate into help on the ground. Of course, mentioned Donald Trump now. This could be on here for years, and I may have really dated this now. But anyway, who cares? Time, it's right. The bottleneck is a challenge, and you've got, that's a piece of familiar collocation, like the bottleneck, and the meaning of, or the connotations of that. It gives an impression of difficult to get through, doesn't it? The idea of a bottleneck, things are jammed up. So many people are here, and so much assistance is coming in. Getting out to the outlying places and all the people who need it is a problem. Okay, so we will go over to the next page. And here we are. So I'll tell you a little bit on this next page. Picking up the bodies is a priority. This creates cohesion with earlier on, doesn't it? When he said about bodies, again, that impersonal element to it. Then the medical assistance needs to move beyond the most urgent triage to treating broken limbs and deep wounds. People are dying, again, it's present continuous tense, because they're unable to get basic medical attention, and that's familiar collocation as well. I'd say often you use familiar collocation, it's to convey an idea quickly and efficiently. And I think because this is an emergency relief situation, you want to convey that information quickly. You don't want it to be flowery and full of elaborate rhetorical techniques and things. You want it to be straight to the point. You want it to give you to the facts. It wants you to give you an idea that something's being done about it and helping people out. A huge number of people are displaced. The challenge, again, that's been used before, creates a sense of cohesion because that's repeated from earlier on. The challenge is to stabilise their communities and set up new places for them to live. But look, you see, look at the determiner used here. Their third person determiner, their communities, for them to live as a pronoun as well. For them to live, it's kind of distance. That's there and other people. I don't think Chris Renier is a bad person, but the way he's kind of written about this is like this has happened to lots of people somewhere else. We're coming in as Americans to help out. They are another. We're helping them. We're coming to them. It doesn't create a great sense of global community. If you see what I mean, it sort of does, but it kind of doesn't. I'd say overall, if you see what I mean, it's like it just doesn't really. The angle is on what America is doing to help, rather than real. If you really think back over the detail of the article, doesn't really say. It just says that the damage is bad, but then it mainly focuses on what America is doing to help out, which is interesting. So I am going to stop there, and the next one will be on another piece of reportage, which is the Jessica Reed scuba diving earthquake one. That's next, but obviously there's loads of other ones. So click on those, and hopefully you found that useful. So bye for now.